law doesn't have any power of its own, doesn't have any economic heft, it's got no military behind it. It depends entirely on people who believe in it, who honor it, and who are willing to fight for it. That's why our history is filled with moments when it was the lawyers who were the heroes.
While delivering the commencement address for the graduates of the University of Minnesota Law School, Governor Tim Walz ruffled some feathers in MAGA world with these comments.
Right now, more than any other time in my lifetime, we need you to live up to the oath that you're about to take. Because I have to be honest with you, you are graduating into a genuine emergency. Every single day, the President of the United States finds new ways to trample rights and undermine the rule of law. Now, I get it for some of you out there. Some would say, boy, it's getting way too political for a commencement address. But I would argue I wouldn't be honoring my oath if I didn't address this head on. Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye, just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared. To be clear, there's no way for us to know whether they were actually criminals or not, because they refused to give them a trial. We're supposed to just take their word for it. Meanwhile, we have an aspiring fascist in Stephen Miller on TV talking about suspending habeas corpus. All of you know this. That's only used in times of rebellion or emergency, neither of which is happening right now.
Not only is out and about white supremacist Stephen Miller calling for the suspension of habeas corpus, the backbone of a free society, but Trump's DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, doesn't even know what it is.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason.
It is so ridiculous and absurd that someone with so much power over other human beings' lives, like Noem, not even knowing or purposely obfuscating the meaning of habeas corpus.
They're not only kicking out folks who are undocumented here, they're kicking out citizens. A few weeks ago, they kicked out 3 children, all under 8 years old. One of them had brain cancer, for Christ's sakes. It's not hyperbole to say we're not far from a world where anyone could get that knock at a door. And there's no guarantee you'd get your day in court or that you'd ever make it home alive from whatever corner of the world they stick you in.
Walz is quite correct in saying that any threats to the constitutional rights of non-American citizens pose a serious threat to our rights and privileges as American citizens. And it's already happening, right? Where they're removing American citizens from this country. And the reason why is because they want to remove any type of threat to their regime, right? To this wannabe dictatorship. As long as you challenge their policies and their decisions, and if it's not aligning with their interests and their beliefs, they are going to come after you. So nobody is safe. Absolutely nobody is safe when it comes to this. It's really frightening, but we have to remain vigilant. Okay. Now that you've heard the most so-called controversial parts of Walz's commencement speech, let's take a look at how Fox News is reacting to him calling out their dear leader.
Here we go again. Secret police of the Nazis. The secret police of the Nazis. Push that ideology, including the Holocaust. But that's how he compares to our American law enforcement.
Here we go again, Harris.
Yeah.
Nazi, fascist, racist, Stalin, Mussolini. The list goes on and on. Hitler.
It's just Nazis every single day. It's exhausting on top of being demagogic and outrageous. And he mentioned that this is what the crumbling of the rule of law is what he said. Crumbling of the rule of law. This is what it looks like. Setting aside any issues that he might have with the Trump administration on deportations, et cetera. I would argue that 10 million illegal immigrants coming into the country, that's what the crumbling of the rule of law looks like.
Leave the Holocaust alone. I'm tired of people who should know better not knowing better. These people no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt with what he is saying with an extension of the Trump administration. This is basically just trying to call Trump Hitler all over again. So they have a very rabid and violent base. And so it's time for people who know better to not know better.
So this is what they do when they don't like what law enforcement's doing. But law enforcement
ICE included is the thin blue line between chaos and order. Keep doing it, ICE.
Would you look at that? The people cheering on actions and policies that resemble what we saw in Nazi Germany and other authoritarian regimes don't like to have a mirror held up to their faces. And you can really tell that the Fox News hosts are deliberately misleading their audience and effectively telling them not to believe whatever their own eyes are seeing and ears are hearing. It's quite crystal clear.
Well, your first trip as Secretary of State was to El Salvador, not to promote democracy, but to cozy up to President Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. The result was a cash for collusion deal to deprive people living in America of their constitutional rights to due process. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, instructed you to facilitate the return to the United States of Abrego Garcia, who the administration admitted was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Your response? You've openly flouted judicial orders. When asked whether you have been in touch with El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, you boasted, quote, "I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would never tell? A judge." Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. You dredged up a relic from the McCarthy era to claim that student protesters posed a threat to the foreign policy of the United States. Give me a break, Mr. Secretary. You know as well as I do this isn't about national security. It's about punishing free speech. And you know that in America, the government doesn't get to use its power to punish speech it doesn't like. Yet in March, you boasted about revoking student visas, saying, and I'm quoting, "We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa," unquote. Let's look at one of those lunatics, Mr. Secretary, Ms. Ozturk. Her crime was co-authoring an op-ed in her college paper critical of Tufts University's response to the war in Gaza. Your own department found zero links to terrorism, no anti-Semitic statements, but you still yanked her visa and shipped her off to detention in Louisiana. And the list goes on and on. The federal judge in the case of Mohsen Madawi, who is the Columbia student who was ambushed by federal agents at his citizenship appointment, said, and I quote, this is the judge, "Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids. Like the McCarthy-era witch hunts of the 1950s, your campaign of fear and repression is eating away at foundational values of our democracy. Back then, it took one voice, Attorney Joseph Welch, to cut through the hysteria with the simple question that marked the beginning of the end of that shameful era. He asked Senator McCarthy, have you no sense of decency? And I would ask you the same, Secretary Rubio. But you have shown through your words and your actions what the answer is. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job based on what I know.
Well, that's
about
just
your
a
record and
flippant
what you
statement,
stand
Mr.
for.
Secretary.
I think the most compelling part of Van Hollen's testimony is really just him using Marco Rubio's own words, right, to show him how he has no respect for the Constitution. He has no respect for the First Amendment. He has no respect for the Fifth Amendment. And he boasts about showing his lack of respect, right, for the federal courts or for due process, right, when it comes to people on these visas who are not putting the U.S.'s foreign policy at risk, right, impacting it. So that's for me where, yeah, here are your words. I don't even have to present any other evidence because the evidence is right in your words to show how you're doing a really bad job and you're happily working with dictators. And then at the end, Marco Rubio has the audacity to say, yeah, the fact that you regret voting for me means I'm doing a good job. That really highlights his true ambition, power for himself, no matter the cost. I'm disgusted For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.